I want you to know something as we begin today. There is something sacred about the early morning. There is something intentional about it. And if you are listening to this right now, perhaps wondering if waking up early truly matters, if it's worth the sacrifice, if it will really change anything, I want you to know that God sees you. God sees the struggle you have with sleep. God sees the way your body wants to stay in bed. God sees the temptation to stay comfortable. And more than that, God knows why he designed the morning the way he did. You're probably tired. Many of you are exhausted. You're juggling responsibilities that seem endless. You're carrying burdens that feel heavy. And the last thing you want to hear is someone telling you to wake up earlier. It sounds impossible. It sounds like another demand on a life that's already depleted. It sounds unreasonable. But what if I told you that waking up early is not about being busier? What if it's not about achieving more or doing more or accomplishing more in your day? What if waking up early is actually about something much deeper, about positioning yourself, about alignment, about inviting God into the very first moments of your consciousness, before the world makes its demands, before your phone buzzes, before your obligations begin? There is a principle hidden in the early morning that most people miss. There is a power in those first hours of the day that has nothing to do with productivity and everything to do with presence. It has nothing to do with hustle and everything to do with peace. It has nothing to do with striving and everything to do with surrender. I sense something in you. I sense a part of you that knows this is true. A part of you that has experienced the peace of an early morning and wants to return to it. A part of you that understands deep down that those quiet hours before the world wakes up are not wasted time. They are sacred time. They are preparation time. They are the time when God whispers most clearly, because there is no noise competing for your attention. So I'm going to speak to you today not as someone who has all the answers about productivity or time management. I'm speaking to you as someone who understands something about the human soul, about how we are designed, about how God has structured our days in such a way that the early morning is actually a gift. It's an invitation. It's a doorway into a different way of living. The question is not whether you can wake up early. The question is whether you're willing to discover what God wants to give you in those early hours. The question is whether you are ready to experience what happens when you position yourself to meet God before you meet the world. The question is whether you are ready for transformation that begins not with doing more, but with being more present, more awake, more aligned with God's design for your life. This is what we are going to explore together today. Not how to trick your body into waking up, not how to force yourself through exhaustion, but why the early morning matters spiritually. How the early morning is actually a spiritual practice, and how waking up early can become the foundation for everything else in your life. Let me start with something that might surprise you. The early morning was never meant to be a struggle. In fact, when you look at how God designed human beings, when you look at the rhythm of nature, when you look at the way the world is structured, everything points to the fact that waking up early should be natural. It should be easy. It should feel like coming home. But in our modern world, we've done something strange. We've fought against this design. We've stayed up late. We've filled our evenings with screens and stimulation. We've disrupted our natural rhythms. We've ignored what our bodies are telling us about rest and wake times. And now, when we try to wake up early, it feels unnatural. It feels like we're forcing ourselves against our nature. But that's not actually true. What we're really doing is recovering our nature. What we're really doing is returning to how we were designed to function. And when you understand this, when you understand that waking up early is not about becoming something different, but about becoming who you already are, everything changes. Here's what I want you to understand about the early morning. The early morning is neutral. It has no opinion about you. It has no judgment. It simply exists. And what you do with those early hours is entirely up to you. You can waste them. You can squander them, you can numb yourself to them, or you can use them as the most powerful hours of your day. Think about it this way. When the morning comes, your mind is fresh, your spirit is clean. You haven't yet been burdened by the day's concerns. You haven't yet been stained by the world's negativity. You're like a blank canvas. And the question becomes, what will you paint on this blank canvas? What will you create with these pristine hours? For many people, what happens is they wake up and immediately check their phone. Immediately their mind is flooded with messages, with news, with other people's agendas. Within minutes of waking, they've given away their attention, their energy, their focus to external demands. The blank canvas is no longer blank. It's already covered with someone else's painting. But what if you reclaim those hours? What if for the first hour or two of your day, you simply said, these hours are mine. These hours are for my soul. These hours are for God. These hours are for discovering who I am and why I'm here. What would change? I'll tell you what would change. Everything. Your entire day would be different. Not because you did more, but because you created space. You created space for silence. You created space for clarity. You created space for God to speak. And when God speaks, everything else makes more sense. When you start your day aligned with God, everything else aligns. This is the spiritual principle behind waking up early. It's not about productivity. It's about alignment. It's about positioning your entire day in relationship to God's presence rather than in reaction to the world's demands. Now, let me address something that I know many of you are thinking. You might be thinking, I'm not a morning person. I've never been a morning person. This isn't for me. This is for people who are naturally wired that way. And I want to gently challenge that belief. The concept of being a morning person or a night person is not as fixed as we think. It's largely a habit. It's largely a pattern that we've created through repeated choices. Yes, some people have natural variations in their circadian rhythms, but these variations are much smaller than we typically believe. And more importantly, they are not fixed. They can change. What's really happening when someone says, I'm not a morning person, is they're saying, I've chosen through repeated habit and preference to go to sleep late and wake up late. And now that pattern is so deeply ingrained that it feels like who I am. But that's not who you are. That's what you've practiced. And what you've practiced, you can change. The beautiful thing about being human is that we have the capacity to change our patterns. We have the capacity to create new habits. We have the capacity to align ourselves differently with time and rhythm and our days. It's not easy. Habits are powerful, but it's absolutely possible. Here's what I want you to understand. Waking up early is not about becoming someone different. It's about becoming someone more conscious. It's about becoming someone who is intentional about their day rather than reactive to it. It's about becoming someone who decides what their morning will be like rather than letting their circumstances decide for them. This is the power that God gives to you. This is the dominion He's placed in your hands. You are not a victim of your sleep patterns. You are not enslaved to your habits. You are free. And in that freedom, you have the capacity to choose something different. But here's what makes it work. Here's what actually changes things. It's not willpower. It's not forcing yourself. It's not white-knuckling your way into waking up early. What actually changes things is understanding the why. What actually changes things is connecting to a deeper purpose. If you're waking up early just to be busier, just to achieve more, just to prove something, it won't last. Your body will eventually rebel. Your mind will eventually resist. The habit will eventually crack. But if you're waking up early because you want to meet God, if you're waking up early because you want to discover who you are, if you're waking up early because you want to position your entire day in a place of peace and alignment, then it becomes sustainable. Then it becomes something you want to do rather than something you feel obligated to do. Let me tell you about the structure of the day. God designed our days in a particular way. He gave us light and darkness. He gave us activity and rest. He designed the rhythm of waking and sleeping. And embedded in this rhythm is a profound wisdom. The early morning is a time of potential. It's a time before the day has written its own story on you. It's a time of possibility. The world is still quiet. Most people are still asleep. There's a stillness to the early morning that doesn't exist at any other time of day. And in that stillness, something powerful can happen. You can think clearly. You can pray deeply. You can plan intentionally. You can meditate. You can read. You can simply sit in silence and feel the presence of God. These things are possible in the early morning in a way they are not possible at other times of day. As the day progresses, as more people wake up, as more demands begin to make themselves known, the quality of silence changes. The possibility of deep focus decreases. The likelihood of being interrupted increases. The early morning is your last best chance to have uninterrupted communion with God and with yourself. This is why saints throughout history have woken up early. This is why spiritual practitioners across all faiths have treated the early morning as sacred. This is why Jesus himself would wake up early to pray. It's not because they were trying to be productive. It's because they understood something about the power of those first hours. Think about a garden. A gardener knows that the early morning is the best time to walk in the garden. The soil is cool. The plants are fresh with dew. The air is clear. The light is gentle. Is the optimal time for growth. And your soul is like a garden. The early morning is the optimal time for your soul to grow. When you tend to your soul in the early morning, everything else that grows from you that day will be more vibrant, more alive, more authentic. Your thoughts will be clearer. Your decisions will be wiser. Your interactions will be kinder. Your work will be more meaningful. All because you've spent those first hours tending to the garden of your soul. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room. I want to address the fact that many of you are tired, genuinely tired. Not just lazy, not just undisciplined, but actually deeply tired. And the thought of waking up even earlier sounds like cruelty. I hear you. I see you. Your tiredness is real. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that the solution is just to wake up earlier. That would be dismissing the reality of what you're experiencing. If you're chronically exhausted, the solution is not waking up earlier. The solution is addressing why you're exhausted in the first place. Are you sleeping enough? Are you sleeping well? Are you going to bed at a reasonable hour? Are you honoring your body's need for rest? These are the real questions. Because if you're exhausted, you don't need to wake up earlier. You need to sleep better. You need to rest more deeply. You need to respect the rhythm that God has built into your body. The early morning is not meant to be stolen from your sleep. The early morning is meant to be enjoyed because you've slept well. The early morning is the natural consequence of honoring your body's need for rest, not a violation of it. So if you are exhausted, I want to invite you to do something radical. I want to invite you to go to bed earlier. I want to invite you to create the conditions for deep restorative sleep. I want to invite you to respect your body's wisdom about what it needs. And then once you've truly rested, once you've given your body what it needs, the early morning will come naturally. It will be a gift, not a burden. But here's the key. Most of us are not actually honoring our need for sleep. Most of us are going to bed late because we're scrolling through our phones, because we're watching screens, because we're not ready to stop the busyness of the day. We're filling our evenings with stimulation instead of quieting ourselves for rest. And then we're surprised that waking up early is hard. This is the first shift that needs to happen. You have to decide that your sleep matters. You have to decide that rest is not laziness, it's obedience to how God designed you. You have to decide that your evening is not meant to be filled with constant input and stimulation. Here's what I want you to experiment with. For 1 week, put your phone away 1 hour before bed. Actually, put it away. Not in your hand, not on your nightstand, in another room, and see what happens. See what you feel like when you wake up the next morning. See how different you feel after one night of actually resting, of actually allowing your mind to quiet down, of actually honoring your body's need to transition into sleep. I bet you'll be surprised. I bet you'll sleep deeper. I bet you'll wake more naturally. I bet the early morning won't feel like such a struggle, because the issue is not that you are lazy. The issue is that you are not sleeping well because you're not respecting the conditions that allow for good sleep. Once you've addressed the sleep piece, once you've created the conditions for real rest, then the early morning becomes something else entirely. It becomes a natural awakening. It becomes a fresh beginning. It becomes a gift that your body is giving you because it's truly rested. And in that rested state, when you wake up and the world is still quiet, something remarkable happens. You have access to a clarity that you don't have at other times of day. You have access to a peace that doesn't exist when the world is awake and demanding. You have access to a connection with God that is qualitatively different from what you experience later in the day. This is what the early morning offers. Not exhaustion, not forced productivity, but genuine clarity, genuine peace, genuine connection. The question is whether you're willing to create the conditions to experience it. Let me talk about what happens in the early morning spiritually. When you wake up early, when you create space in those first hours for silence and reflection and prayer, something shifts in your consciousness. You begin to experience your day differently. You begin to live from a different place. Throughout most of the day, we live in what I call a state of reaction. Something happens and we react to it. Someone says something and we respond. A problem arises and we try to solve it. Our day becomes a series of reactions to external events. And this is exhausting. This is depleting. Because we are constantly being pulled in different directions, constantly responding to demands that are not ours, constantly trying to manage what's coming at us. But in the early morning, before the day begins, you have the opportunity to live in a state of intention. You have the opportunity to decide who you want to be that day. You have the opportunity to align yourself with God's purposes. You have the opportunity to plant seeds spiritually that will grow throughout your day. Think of it this way. If you go through your day in reaction, you're like a ship without a rudder, being pushed around by the winds and waves. You end up wherever the currents take you. But if you start your day in intention, if you clarify your purpose in the early morning, if you align yourself with God's direction, you are like a ship with a rudder. You still encounter the same winds and waves, but now you're moving in a direction of your choosing. Now you're moving towards something rather than being pushed around by the currents. This is the power of the early morning. It's the time when you can establish your intention for the day. It's the time when you can reconnect with your purpose. It's the time when you can align yourself with God's character and God's promises. And when you do that, everything else that happens that day happens in the context of that alignment. So a difficult conversation becomes an opportunity to practice patience and compassion, because you've aligned yourself with God's character in the early morning. A setback becomes an opportunity to trust God's provision, because you've connected with God's promises in the early morning. A moment of temptation becomes an opportunity to choose your values, because you've clarified what matters in the early morning. The early morning shapes the entire day that follows. Not because you are more productive in those hours, though you might be, but because you've positioned yourself differently. You've positioned yourself as someone who is awake, both literally and spiritually. You've positioned yourself as someone who knows who they are and why they are here. You've positioned yourself as someone who is aligned with something larger than themselves. This is what the spiritual tradition has always known. This is why contemplatives and mystics and prophets throughout history have been people of the early morning. Not because they were trying to do more, but because they understood that the early morning is when transformation happens. The early morning is when you become more yourself. The early morning is when you encounter God most clearly. Now, I want to talk about the practical side of this, because understanding the spiritual principle is one thing, actually waking up early is another. So let me give you some real wisdom about how to make this happen. First, it starts the night before. The evening is when you set yourself up for success the next morning. So create an evening routine that honors sleep. Put your phone away, dim the lights, do something calming. Tell your body that it's time to transition into rest. This is not optional, this is essential, because the quality of your sleep determines the ease of your morning awakening. Second, don't try to change too drastically too quickly. If you normally wake up at 8 and you want to wake up at 5, don't try to change that overnight. Your body will rebel. Your mind will resist. Instead, move your wake up time back by 15 minutes every few days. Give your body time to adjust to the new rhythm. Give your mind time to accept the change. This is a gradual process, and that's okay. Gradual is actually better because it's more sustainable. Third, have something to wake up for. This is crucial. If you wake up early just to wake up early, is torture. But if you wake up early for something that matters to you, to pray, to read, to journal, to meditate, to watch the sunrise, to have quiet time before anyone else is awake, then waking up early becomes something you want to do. It becomes an invitation rather than an obligation. Fourth, prepare everything the night before. Decide what time you're going to wake up. Set your alarm. Put your clothes out. Prepare whatever you need for your morning routine. Remove all friction. The fewer decisions you have to make when you first wake up, the better. Your willpower is low when you first wake up. So set yourself up so that the path of least resistance is also the path that serves you. Fifth, when you first wake up, don't immediately check your phone. This is critical. Your first moments of consciousness are sacred. They're a doorway into the rest of your day. Don't let someone else's agenda into those first moments. Give yourself at least 30 minutes before you touch your phone. Use that time to wake up slowly, to pray, to think, to prepare yourself mentally and spiritually for the day ahead. Sixth, let yourself wake up gradually. Don't jolt awake. Let the process unfold. Sit for a moment before you get out of bed. Feel your breathing, feel your body, feel the presence of God. Then slowly, gradually, move into your day. This gradual awakening sets the tone for a day that unfolds with intention and presence rather than rushing and reactivity. Seventh, do something that feels restorative in the early morning. If you force yourself to wake up early and then immediately jump into productivity, you're defeating the purpose. The early morning is not meant to be another time of striving. It's meant to be a time of connection and restoration. So read something that nourishes your soul. Pray, journal, meditate. Watch the sunrise. Walk. Do something that feeds you, not something that depletes you further. These are the practical pieces. But underneath all of these techniques is a fundamental truth. You are making a choice about how you spend your time and energy. You are deciding that the early morning matters. You are deciding that your spiritual life matters. You are deciding that alignment with God matters more than a few extra minutes of sleep. This is a decision that only you can make. No one can make it for you. No technique will work if you haven't made this decision internally. But once you've made it, once you've decided that the early morning is worth it, that your spiritual life is worth it, that your growth is worth it, then the techniques work. Then the practices work. Then waking up early becomes possible. Now, let me ground this in scripture, because this is not just my idea. This is not just a productivity hack or a wellness technique. This is rooted in the deepest truths of scripture. This is rooted in how God has revealed himself throughout history. This is rooted in the design of creation itself. Psalm 5:3, NKJV. My voice you shall hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning I will direct my prayer to you, and I shall watch. The psalmist is declaring something essential here. In the morning, there is something unique that happens in prayer. There is a clarity, a directedness, a attentiveness that is particular to the morning. The psalmist is not just praying randomly. The psalmist is choosing to direct prayer specifically to God in the morning. And he's positioning himself to watch, to observe, to pay attention, to see what God is doing. This is profound. The psalmist understands that the morning is the optimal time to bring your petitions before God. The morning is the time when you can direct your prayer with intention. And then, having prayed, you position yourself to watch, to see how God responds, to perceive his action in your life. When you wake up early and spend that time in prayer, you're positioning yourself to hear God. You're creating the conditions in which his voice can be heard, his guidance can be perceived, his presence can be felt. This is not a mystical or vague thing. This is practical. When you are quiet, when you are rested, when you are aligned, you are more attuned to God's voice. You notice things you wouldn't notice otherwise. You perceive things that remain hidden when you are rushed and reactive. This is why the psalmist goes to God in the morning. This is why the morning prayer is directed, intentional, focused, purposeful. And this is why, having prayed, he positions himself to watch. He knows that God will speak. He's created the conditions for that communication to happen. Proverbs 8:17, NKJV, I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently will find me. This is wisdom speaking. And wisdom is revealing a principle that applies directly to the early morning. Wisdom says that those who seek diligently will find. The emphasis is on diligence. It's not passive. It's not lazy. It's active, purposeful seeking. When you wake up early, when you commit those first hours to seeking God, to seeking wisdom, to seeking understanding of your life and your purpose, you are seeking diligently. And diligent seeking leads to finding. Diligent seeking leads to discovery. Diligent seeking leads to wisdom. Most people don't seek diligently because they are not willing to sacrifice the comfort of extra sleep. Most people don't seek diligently because they don't prioritize it. But those who do, those who wake up early, who commit those first hours to seeking God and wisdom and truth, those people will find, they will discover, they will gain understanding that others miss. This is not a promise that you'll get everything you want. This is a promise that if you seek, you will find. And what you find will be more valuable than the thing you sacrifice to find it. The early morning hours you give up will be repaid in wisdom, in clarity, in understanding, in connection with God that transforms your entire day and your entire life. Mark 1:35 NKJV. Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. This is Jesus, the Son of God, the one who had literally everything to do, who was constantly surrounded by people needing his help, healing his diseases, wanting his attention. And what did Jesus do? He woke up early. He rose a long while before daylight. He went to a solitary place and he prayed. This is not a suggestion. This is a model. This is Jesus showing us what's important. Jesus had more legitimate demands on his time than anyone who has ever lived. And yet Jesus prioritized the early morning. Jesus prioritized solitude. Jesus prioritized prayer. If Jesus needed the early morning to commune with God, if Jesus needed that time to align himself with the Father's will, then we need it too. We're not more capable than Jesus. We're not more equipped than Jesus. We don't have more clarity or more purpose than Jesus. And Jesus woke up early to pray. There's something powerful about this. Jesus is showing us that the way to live as a son or daughter of God is not through constant activity, not through trying to meet everyone's needs, not through being available every moment. The way to live as a son or daughter of God is through grounding yourself in communion with God. And the early morning is when that communion happens most clearly. When you wake up early, when you follow the model that Jesus gave us, when you create that solitary place in the early morning to pray and connect with God, you are aligning yourself with the one who showed us how to live. You're following the path that Jesus walked. You're putting yourself in position to access the same communion with God that Jesus accessed. Ephesians 5:14, 1:6, NKJV. Therefore he says, awake you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. This passage is addressing something deeper than just physical waking up. It's addressing spiritual awakening. It's calling you to wake up to the reality of who you are in Christ, to the light that Christ is offering, to the transformation that's available to you. But then it adds something crucial: redeeming the time. Paul is saying that time is precious, time is limited, your days are not infinite, and in a world that is spiritually dark, the days are evil. Redeeming the time becomes essential. Using your time wisely, using your time in alignment with God's purposes, using your time to grow, to serve, to love, to become who God is calling you to be. The early morning is how you redeem time. The early morning is how you reclaim hours that would otherwise be lost to reactivity and unconsciousness. The early morning is how you use the limited time you have in a way that actually matters. When you wake up early and use that time to pray, to read God's word, to align yourself with his purposes, you're redeeming that time. You're refusing to let it be wasted. You're refusing to let it be stolen by the world's demands. You're insisting that those hours will be used for something that lasts, something that matters, something that aligns with eternity. Lamentations 3:20, 3:2-4, NKJV. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. There's something remarkable in this passage. The speaker is in the midst of suffering and lamentation. The context is one of pain and loss. And yet, what does the speaker recognize? That God's mercies are new every morning, that God's faithfulness is great, that even in the midst of difficulty, there is newness, there is mercy, there is hope. This is profound spiritual truth. Every morning is a new beginning. Every morning, God's compassion is renewed toward you. Every morning, the slate is clean. Every morning, you have the opportunity to start again. This is not just a metaphor. This is the actual experience available to you if you're awake to receive it. When you sleep through the morning, when you miss those first hours of the day, you're missing the actual tangible experience of God's new mercies. You're sleeping through the moment when God is offering you a fresh start, a new beginning, renewed compassion. But when you wake up early, when you greet the morning with intention and presence, you actually experience what the psalmist is talking about. You feel the newness, you sense the mercy, you perceive the faithfulness. The early morning becomes the time when you encounter God's character most directly. And what is the response? The soul says, the Lord is my portion. Not possessions, not status, not achievement, but God himself. The soul recognizes that God is enough. That in God's presence there is hope. That waiting for God, seeking God, this is where life is found. Proverbs 27:12, NKJV. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. This is about wisdom and foresight. The prudent person thinks ahead. The prudent person plans. The prudent person anticipates challenges and prepares for them. And the simple person, the person who doesn't think ahead, who doesn't plan, who doesn't prepare, that person is blindsided and punished. This applies directly to your day. If you wake up late, if you rush through the morning, if you immediately begin reacting to what's coming at you, you're acting like a simple person. You're not giving yourself the space to think ahead, to plan, to prepare. You're just reacting. But if you wake up early, if you spend that time in prayer and reflection and planning, if you think through your day and align yourself with your priorities, you are acting with prudence. You are foreseeing the challenges that are likely to come. You are preparing yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to face them wisely rather than reactively. The early morning is the time of prudence. Is the time when you're not yet depleted by the day's demands. Is the time when you can think clearly and plan wisely. Is the time when you can position yourself for success. Not success in the world's terms, but success in living according to your values and God's purposes. Deuteronomy 4:9, NKJV. Only take heed to yourself and diligently keep your soul, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life, and teach them to your children and your grandchildren. Moses is commanding the people of Israel to remember, to guard their souls, to not forget what God has done, to pass on these truths to the next generation. There's something here about the importance of creating space to remember, to reflect, to consolidate your spiritual understanding. And the early morning is when this happens. In the early morning, when the world is quiet and your mind is clear, you can actually remember who you are. You can actually think about what God has done in your life. You can actually strengthen the truths that you know. If you don't create that space, if you don't wake up early to remember and reflect, what happens? The events of the day crowd everything out. The demands pile up, the noise increases, and slowly you forget. You forget what God has done. You forget who you are. You forget the truths that you know. But when you wake up early, when you create that space for reflection and remembrance, when you guard your soul by positioning it in God's presence, you are doing what Moses commanded. You are remembering, you are consolidating your understanding, you are preparing to pass these truths on to others. Philippians 4:8, NKJV. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Paul is inviting you to be intentional about what you meditate on, to focus your mind on things that are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, and praiseworthy. Not to let your mind wander randomly. Not to let your thoughts be shaped by whatever comes across your screen, but to deliberately, intentionally focus your mind on things that matter, things that are good, things that will grow you and strengthen you. The early morning is when this is possible. When you first wake up, your mind hasn't yet been flooded with the world's noise. You have the opportunity to fill it with things that matter. You have the opportunity to meditate on truth. You have the opportunity to focus your thought life on what is good. If you wait until later in the day, if you allow your mind to be filled first with the world's noise, with anxiety about your day, with negative thoughts about your circumstances, then Paul's command becomes much harder. But in the early morning, when your mind is clean and clear, you can deliberately choose what to meditate on. You can deliberately choose to focus on what is true and noble and just and pure. And in doing so, you are shaping not just that moment, but the entire trajectory of your day. Now let me speak directly to your heart. I want to address the real struggles you're facing, the real reasons you're not waking up early, the real obstacles that are in your way. Some of you struggle with this because you feel like you're not a morning person. And I want to tell you something. Being a morning person is not a fixed trait. It's a practice. It's a habit. It's a choice that you make, and it becomes easier the more you make it. Think about it this way. If someone has been practicing being a night person for years, if they've chosen again and again to stay up late, to fill their evening with stimulation, to avoid sleep, then of course they're a night person. They've practiced it into being. But that practice can change. That habit can shift. That choice can become something different. What I'm inviting you to do is to experiment. Not for a lifetime, not as a permanent commitment, but for 1 week or 2 weeks. Try waking up early. Try creating the conditions for good sleep. Try using that time in the morning for something that nourishes you, and see what happens. See how you feel. See if something shifts. I promise you, if you actually try this, if you actually commit to it for a couple of weeks, you'll discover something that surprises you. You'll discover that the morning is actually a gift. You'll discover that those early hours offer something that you didn't know you were missing. You'll discover that waking up early is not a burden, but a blessing. Some of you struggle with this because you feel like you don't have time. Your schedule is already packed. Your life is already full. The thought of waking up even earlier feels like it would break you. And I hear this, I understand this. Life is genuinely busy for many of you. But here's what I want to gently suggest. When you wake up early, when you spend that first hour in prayer and alignment with God, you don't actually lose that hour, you gain it back. Because the rest of your day becomes more efficient, more focused, more intentional. You make better decisions. You handle challenges more gracefully. You waste less time on things that don't matter. It's like the difference between driving with a map and driving without one. If you drive without a map, without knowing where you're going, you might move fast, but you're probably going in circles. You're using a lot of energy without actually getting anywhere. But if you take the time at the beginning to figure out where you're going, if you create that clarity before you start moving, then the entire journey becomes more efficient. The early morning is how you create the map for your day. It's how you establish your direction. And once you've done that, the rest of your day becomes more efficient. So you are not actually losing time, you are gaining it. Some of you struggle with this because you feel like you're already doing so much right, and you feel like waking up early is just one more thing you are failing at. You feel like you are not disciplined enough, not committed enough, not strong enough, and so you feel shame around not waking up early. And I want to tell you something important. Shame is not the motivation that changes behavior. Shame makes you hide. Shame makes you shut down. Shame makes you feel like a failure. And when you feel like a failure, you are likely to fail. But what does change behavior is love. What does change behavior is understanding why something matters. What does change behavior is connecting to something deeper than obligation. So I'm not inviting you to wake up early out of shame, out of thinking you should, out of believing you're failing. I'm inviting you to wake up early out of curiosity, out of willingness to experiment, out of desire to discover what God is offering you in those early hours. That's a completely different motivation. That's a motivation that lasts. Some of you struggle with this because you feel tired, and I've addressed this already, but I want to circle back to it because it's so important. If you're genuinely deeply tired, the solution is not waking up earlier. The solution is sleeping better. The solution is honoring your body's need for rest. The solution is creating the conditions for deep restorative sleep. Please, if you are exhausted, don't add waking up earlier to your burden. Instead, address the sleep issue. Go to bed earlier. Put your phone away in the evening. Create darkness and quiet in your sleeping space. Exercise during the day. All of these things support better sleep. And once you're sleeping better, once your body is truly rested, waking up early becomes natural. It becomes something your rested body wants to do. Some of you struggle with this because you live with others, a partner, children, roommates, and you feel like waking up early would disrupt them. And I understand this. But here's the thing. If you are gentle, if you're quiet, if you don't make noise, you can absolutely wake up early without waking others. It's entirely possible to get up, use the bathroom quietly, move to another room, and spend that time in peace without anyone else knowing you've woken up. And more than that, if you explain to the people you live with why this matters to you, most of them will be supportive. Most people understand that spiritual practice is important. Most people respect someone choosing to take care of their soul. You might be surprised at how supportive people can be when they understand what you are doing. Some of you struggle with this because you feel resistant. You feel like waking up early is going against what you want, and you don't want to live in constant resistance to yourself. You want your life to flow. You want things to feel natural and easy. And I hear this, I respect this. Resistance is painful. Forcing yourself is exhausting. But here's what I want you to understand. The resistance you are feeling is not because waking up early is bad for you. The resistance you're feeling is because it's new. The resistance you're feeling is because it's unfamiliar. The resistance you're feeling is because it's different from what you've been practicing. Think about someone learning to play an instrument. At first, there's tremendous resistance. The instrument feels foreign in their hands. The movements feel awkward. Everything feels wrong. But if they persist, if they keep practicing, something shifts. The resistance starts to fade. The movements start to feel natural. Eventually, playing the instrument feels like flow. It feels effortless. The early morning is the same. At first, there will be resistance. But if you persist, if you give it time, the resistance fades. The early wake up starts to feel natural. The early morning starts to feel like home. And eventually, it flows. It becomes something you want to do, not something you're forcing yourself to do. This is the journey. This is the process. And I want you to understand that the resistance you feel at the beginning is not a sign that is wrong for you. It's just a sign that is new. It's just a sign that you are growing. It's just a sign that you are expanding beyond what's comfortable and familiar into something richer, something deeper, something more aligned with who you are called to be. I want to speak now to a deeper truth. There is something about the early morning that is connected to your destiny. There is something about how you spend your first hours that determines who you become. Let me explain what I mean. Your life is shaped by your habits. Your habits are shaped by your daily choices, and your daily choices are determined to a large extent by the state you're in when you make them. If you wake up rushed and reactive, your entire day will be rushed and reactive. If you wake up peaceful and intentional, your entire day will be more peaceful and intentional. So the early morning is not separate from your destiny. The early morning is the foundation of your destiny. How you treat those first hours determines who you become. How you spend that time determines the trajectory of your entire day, and the accumulation of those days becomes your life. If you consistently wake up early and spend that time in alignment with God, in reflection, in prayer, you become a person who is connected to something larger than themselves. You become a person who is intentional. You become a person who knows who they are and why they are here, and that person makes different choices. That person shows up differently in the world. That person creates a different life. But if you consistently wake up rushed and reactive, if you immediately begin reacting to demands without having first aligned yourself, without having first created space for your own soul to be heard, you become a different kind of person. You become a person who is fragmented, who is pulled in different directions, who doesn't know what they really value or believe, and that person creates a different kind of life. So the question is not just about waking up early. The question is about who you want to become. The question is about what kind of life you want to create. And the answer to those questions is intimately connected to how you treat your mornings. This is why I'm inviting you so insistently to reclaim your early morning. It's not about productivity. It's not about fitting more in. It's about becoming who you're called to be. It's about creating a life that aligns with your deepest values and God's purposes. And that transformation begins with how you treat your first hours. Let me tell you what happens when you commit to the early morning. When you wake up before the world does, when you spend that time in prayer and reflection and connection with God, when you make this commitment and you stick with it, something shifts in your entire being. First, you develop a kind of spiritual strength that you didn't have before. You build capacity for stillness. You build capacity for listening. You build capacity for being present with yourself and with God. And that capacity transfers into the rest of your life. You become someone who can be still in the midst of chaos. You become someone who can listen even when it's hard. You become someone who can be present even when there are 1,000 demands on your attention. Second, you develop clarity. As you consistently spend time in prayer and reflection, as you consistently create space for your own thoughts and God's voice, you develop a clarity about who you are and what matters. The noise of the world becomes quieter. The demands of others become less compelling. Your own knowing becomes louder. And with that clarity, you make decisions from a place of wisdom rather than from a place of reaction. Third, you develop connection. Connection with God becomes tangible. Connection with yourself becomes real. You're no longer operating at the surface level, reacting to everything that comes at you. You're operating from a deeper place, a place of connection. And when you operate from connection, your entire life changes. Your relationships change. Your work changes. Your sense of purpose changes. Fourth, you develop peace. Not the absence of challenges, but peace in the midst of challenges. Not the elimination of struggles, but the capacity to face struggles without being destroyed by them. This peace comes from knowing that you're connected to something larger than yourself. This peace comes from knowing that God is with you. This peace comes from the actual experience of meeting God in the early morning again and again and discovering that He is faithful, He is good, He is present. This is what happens when you commit to the early morning. These are not small shifts. These are fundamental transformations in how you experience your life and how you move through the world. And the beautiful thing is, these shifts start immediately. You don't have to wait months to experience them. The first morning you wake up early, the first morning you spend time in prayer and presence before the world makes its demands, you feel a difference. You sense something shift. You taste what's possible. And from that taste, you want more. This is how transformation actually happens. It's not through willpower or force. It's through tasting something good and wanting to move toward it. is through experiencing the peace of the early morning and wanting to return to it again and again. It's through meeting God in those quiet hours and discovering his faithfulness so deeply that you can't help but come back to meet him there again. So I'm not asking you to commit to a lifetime of early mornings. I'm asking you to commit to tasting it. I'm asking you to give it a real try, not half-hearted, not obligatory, but genuinely, openly, willingly. Experience what the early morning offers. Feel what it's like to meet God before you meet the world. Feel what it's like to align yourself before the day's demands pull you in different directions. Feel what it's like to think about your day from a place of intention rather than reaction. And I promise you, once you've tasted it, once you've really experienced it, you won't be able to go back. Not because you're obligated, but because you've discovered something real, something true, something that feeds your soul in a way that nothing else does. Let me speak now about what this means practically in your life, what this looks like in the context of your actual, real, complicated existence. You might be someone with children. You might be someone who has to wake up and immediately care for others. You might be someone whose morning is not quiet or peaceful because of the demands of the people you're responsible for. If that's you, I want you to know that this can still work for you. It's just going to look different. Your early morning might be 15 minutes before anyone else wakes up. It might be sitting in your car before you go into work. It might be while you're drinking your first cup of coffee after everyone has left the house. The location and the duration might be different, but the principle is the same. You're creating a small pocket of space in the early morning where you connect with yourself and with God before the day's demands begin. And there's something beautiful about this, even if it's a small amount of time, even if it's interrupted, even if it's not perfect, it matters. Because you are making a choice. You're saying that your soul matters. You're saying that connection with God matters. You're saying that who you are and what you value matters enough to protect some space for it. And here's the thing, as you protect that space, as you honor it, as you return to it again and again, something shifts. You become more able to protect it. More time opens up. The universe conspires to give you what you are devoted to protecting. It's one of those spiritual principles that's true even though it doesn't make logical sense. You might also be someone who works a job with unusual hours. You might be someone who works overnight or shifts that change or jobs that don't allow for a traditional early morning. If that's you, the principle still applies, but the application will be different. Your early morning is whenever you have time to yourself after adequate sleep. For you, that might be in the afternoon, that might be in the evening, the clock time doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a regular time when you create space for yourself, when you connect with God, when you align yourself with your values before you move into the next thing. Some of you might be dealing with depression or mental illness that makes waking up difficult, that makes mornings particularly hard, that makes it difficult to get out of bed. If that's you, I want you to know that this message is not for you right now. Right now, you need to focus on healing. You need to focus on getting the support you need. You need to be gentle with yourself. The early morning can wait. Your healing cannot. But even for those of you dealing with these challenges, I want you to know that as you heal, as you stabilize, as you find your way back to wellness, the early morning becomes available to you again. And it becomes a tool in your healing. It becomes a way to support your mental health. It becomes a way to strengthen your connection with God and with yourself. But that's something to explore when you're ready, not something to force when you're struggling. Some of you might be someone who has tried this before and failed. You've woken up early for a while and then stopped. You've made the commitment and then broken it. And now you feel shame. You feel like you're a failure. You feel like you can't sustain anything. And I want to tell you something important. Every moment is a new beginning. Every morning is a fresh start. Your failure in the past doesn't dictate your future. You don't have to become the person who sustains early mornings. You just have to wake up tomorrow and do it tomorrow, and then the next day you do it again. You don't have to look at a whole lifetime of waking up early. You just have to look at tomorrow morning. This is the power of the early morning. Every morning is a new mercy. Every morning is a new opportunity. Every morning you get to start again. So if you failed before, that's okay. That's in the past. What matters is what you do tomorrow morning. What matters is whether tomorrow you wake up early and create space for yourself and God. And if you fail again, if you sleep through one morning or a week of mornings, that's also okay. That's also in the past. What matters is that you return to it. What matters is that you don't let one failure become many failures. What matters is that you get back up. This is the gift of the early morning. It's a fresh start every single day. You don't have to carry yesterday's failures into today. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to show up tomorrow and try again. I want to circle back to something I touched on earlier, but I want to go deeper. I want to talk about the connection between early rising and your ultimate purpose. There is a reason that every spiritual tradition, every wisdom teaching, every transformative practice I know of involves waking up early. It's not arbitrary. It's not just a quirk of religious people. It's because there is something fundamentally true about the early morning that positions you for growth, for connection, for understanding, for transformation. Think about the arc of a day. It begins with potential. The day is new. Nothing has been written on it yet. The day is full of possibility. But as the day progresses, as events happen, as you make choices and have experiences, the day fills up. It becomes weighted. By the end of the day has already written its own story on you. But the early morning exists at the boundary between nothing and something. The early morning exists in that moment when the day is still pure potential. And when you wake up and claim that moment, when you use that time to set intention and align yourself, you're shaping what that day becomes. You're not just reacting to what happens. You're actively participating in creating your day. This is the power. This is why the early morning matters. Not because you are more productive, but because you're participating in your own creation. You're participating in who you're becoming. You're participating in what your life means. And here's the profound part. This daily choice, made again and again, creates your life. The person you become is the accumulation of all the mornings when you woke up and chose how to begin. The life you create is the accumulation of all the days that began with intention and alignment. So when I talk about the early morning as connected to your ultimate purpose, I'm not being metaphorical, I'm being literal. Your ultimate purpose is being created day by day, morning by morning, by the choices you make in those first hours. The person you become is becoming moment by moment, choice by choice, morning by morning. This is why I'm asking you to take this seriously. This is why I'm inviting you to try. Because the early morning is not separate from your destiny. The early morning is your destiny in process. The early morning is where you are actively creating who you are called to become. Now let me speak some declarations over you. These are declarations of truth that I want you to believe about yourself and your capacity to wake up early, to create space for your soul, to align yourself with God's purposes. I am capable of waking up early, not because I'm perfect or disciplined or better than anyone else, but because I am human. I have the capacity to change my habits. I have the capacity to make new choices. I have the capacity to create a different relationship with my morning. My early morning is sacred. It is not just another time to be busy or productive. It is a time when I connect with myself and with God. It is a time when I honor who I am and who I'm called to become. It is holy time. My sleep is important. I honor my body's need for rest. I create the conditions for deep restorative sleep. I go to bed at a reasonable hour. I put away my phone. I transition into sleep with intention. And because I honor sleep, I wake up rested and peaceful. When I wake up early, I am not fighting against myself. I am aligning myself with who I really am. I am coming into harmony with my deepest values. I am positioning myself for the day in a way that serves me and serves others. My early morning creates a ripple effect. The peace I create in those first hours affects not just me, but everyone I encounter throughout the day. My intentionality influences the world around me. My alignment with God's purposes brings blessing to others. I am not defined by my past failures. Every morning is a new beginning. Every morning I have the opportunity to choose again. Every morning God's mercies are new. And I can return to this practice again and again, as many times as I need to, without shame, without condemnation, with only the gentle invitation to come back and try again. My life is worth protecting. My soul is worth the small amount of time it takes to connect with it each morning. The person I'm becoming is worth the sacrifice of a few extra minutes of sleep. My ultimate purpose is worth showing up for, even when it's hard. Let me close with a prayer. A prayer to commit this journey to God. A prayer to release the pressure and perfectionism and replace it with gentle intention. Father, I come to you in this early morning moment recognizing that you are with me. You have been with me through every morning I've woken to, through every morning I've missed, through every moment of my life, and I'm grateful. I'm asking you now to help me understand the gift of the early morning. Help me to feel, not just understand intellectually, but actually feel in my bones that those first hours are sacred. Help me to sense your presence in the quiet of the early day. Help me to experience the peace and clarity that comes when I meet you before I meet the world. I'm asking you to help me honor my sleep. Help me to recognize that rest is not laziness, but obedience to how you designed me. Help me to create the conditions for deep restorative sleep. And help me to wake up naturally, rested and peaceful, ready to greet the day with intention. I'm asking you to transform my relationship with the early morning. Where there has been struggle, bring ease. Where there has been resistance, bring willingness. Where there has been shame, bring grace. Help me to move toward waking up early, not from obligation, not from should, but from genuine desire to discover what you want to give me in those precious early hours. Help me to start small. Help me to be gentle with myself. Help me to not expect perfection. Help me to simply show up again and again with openness and curiosity. Help me to taste the goodness of the early morning and then want to return to it. And as I establish this practice, as I commit to meeting you in the early morning, help me to see how this shapes my entire day. Help me to notice how peace flows from those early hours into everything that follows. Help me to perceive the subtle ways that my day becomes more aligned, more intentional, more connected when I've spent the early morning with you. Help me to understand that this is not selfish, this is not self-indulgent, this is actually the most loving thing I can do for myself and for those around me. Help me to see that my spiritual health affects everyone I encounter. Help me to recognize that my alignment creates space for others to align as well. And when I fail, when I slip through a morning or several mornings, help me to return without shame. Help me to remember that every morning is new. Help me to remember that you are not disappointed in me. Help me to simply start again with gentleness and compassion for myself. I commit this journey to you. I commit my early mornings to you. I commit my sleep and my waking to you. I commit my transformation to you. I trust you with this process. I trust that you will guide me. I trust that you will support me. I trust that you will meet me in the early morning again and again with your faithfulness and your love. Thank you for the gift of another day. Thank you for the gift of the early morning. Thank you for meeting me here in this moment with your presence and your purpose. Amen. As you go from here, as you turn off this video or this audio, I want you to know something. Tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off, when that moment comes when you have to decide whether to wake up or to sleep, remember this message. Remember that there is something waiting for you in the early morning. Remember that God is waiting for you in those quiet hours. Remember that you have the capacity to do this. Remember that this matters more than the few extra minutes of sleep. And when that moment comes, when that choice is in front of you, I invite you to choose the morning. I invite you to get up. I invite you to create the space. I invite you to discover what God wants to give you. I promise you, if you do this, if you really commit to it, if you give it a genuine chance, your life will change. Not because you are doing more, but because you are being more awake. You are being more present. You're being more aligned. You're being more connected. This is the gift of the early morning. This is what I'm inviting you to discover. Go with peace. Go with intention. Go and create your mornings as sacred space. And in doing so, transform your days. And in transforming your days, transform your life. The morning is waiting for you.